gloves off, and today we have Webb County Republican Chair Randy Blair, and we're going to talk about the insights of voting and what's going on here in Texas.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Doing great.
Good? Let's touch base on what's going on with this election season.
Well, again, here in Webb County, the interesting thing is, to begin with, yes, we have two local candidates on the Republican ballot. That's first in a long time. And I think they're very qualified candidates that each are going to have a very good chance in November. Neither one of them had opponents in the primaries, so essentially, they could walk through it pretty easily and get ready to get going for November. One, Luis de la Garza, he knows his opponent, Richard Raymond, and Richard Raymond, I believe, is going to have his hands full. Okay. I think he's going to have to prove what he's done for the last number of years up in Austin and prove how he's been representing us. On the other side, we've got Poncho Caso. Poncho Caso is going to run for county judge. Again, he had no opponent in the primary, but will be facing off either Donald or Patricia, depending on who wins today. So he's going to learn of his opponent this evening, and he'll be ready to get going. So he's both of them are poised for the next several months, getting ready for November, and I think we're going to have some exciting politics going into that general election. Correct.
Tell me a little bit, Mr. Blair, what's going on with, how come we haven't had any Republican, candidates in the last, decade?
It's very simple. There is such a stronghold here by the Democratic Party. It's extremely difficult for any candidate to move in and do anything. A prime example is the primary itself. Early voting, I believe we had less than 900 votes on the Republican side. And on the Democratic side, even though they had, I forgot, it was about 16,000, that is actually a continual decreasing number. But there's a huge differential there. And the reason is because we don't have enough running on the Republican ticket to make it a ticket of interest in the primary, because there's no opponents for each other. And we don't want that necessarily. We'd rather fill our ticket and not have two running for the same race. But all the exciting contested races are going to be on the Democratic side. So it's extremely difficult to break into that. You also have a lot of people saying that, I can't vote Republican. My grandfather will roll in his grave, roll over in his grave. A lot of the money goes to the Democratic side down here. The other thing that has been helping them for many, many years, and this will be the last year that they're going to have this little advantage, and that is our state. If you remember last year, they passed a bill that is going to remove in the 2020 election the straight party box. And the purpose of that is to get more people to strictly vote for individuals and not for a party, because as you and I know, parties do not sit in an office, people do. Exactly. And so it's going to make people have to vote that way. It's going to make the local Democratic Party have to really promote their individual candidates rather than just go in, don't think about anything, just mark one box, walk out, 5 seconds, and you're done. That is not an intellectual way to run any kind of a campaign, but it's their way of keeping them dependent on their party, and that's what they've done for many years here.
Is this of course it's Texas, but does that type of philosophy go throughout the states?
It does in a lot of cases, because from what I see, the Republican Party is more a party of individuals.
Sure.
We allow for individual thinking, whereas I don't see that as much in the Democratic Party. I've spoken to and debated against some local Democrats, and anytime you discuss a certain issue, you might as well give them a deck of index cards, because their opinions are what you heard on the news last night from the Democratic Party. They're not really allowed to have their own thinking. That became very evident this past year when on the national level, some Democrats wanted to proclaim basically themselves to be pro-life. And in doing so, there was a very high level discussion at the Democratic Party that came out and said, initially it was, you're not welcomed here. And then, of course, Pelosi came out and had to say, oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yeah, don't get that wrong. Everybody's welcome here. But basically, if you're pro-lifer, you can say all you want to, but you're not going to have a say in this party, and you'll never hold an office if you're pro-life. So that's not inclusion. The Republican Party, we have a full inclusion. We have pro-lifers. We have pro-abortion. We allow you to have your own mind. And because of that, I believe that we're more a voice of the people rather than what we see in the Democratic Party. And I see that across our state, much less across the nation. But you definitely see it in Texas, that we allow everybody of color, of whatever religion, it doesn't matter. If you go to our state convention, which this year is going to be held in San Antonio, you're going to see a lot of that. And, I think you see it in our candidates. I think you see it, in our platform. So that's where we hopefully, without, by removing that little box, will allow the people down here to really think for themselves and vote the way they want to, and not be almost forced to mark that little box.
No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. When one goes in there, when we were younger, and in Dallas, you look, and I made the mistakes before somebody sat down and actually talked to me about thinking for vote. You saw all the Hispanic names, and you dotted them out. Saw all the males, you dotted them out. And then all of a sudden they said, you know what? Take a look at who the person is. Understand what they're trying to do, because that's where you live. And the one that said that, which is he's now a activist towards BLM and so on and so forth, and now he's a commissioner in Dallas. That was Wiley Price. And at that time he was a little bit different than now, Yes. But then he's and when I saw that, I said, you know what, we have to look at each individual and what they have to bring to the table. And here in Webb County, you see the same party, Democrat Party, and they're calling each other corrupt, and yet they say they're not corrupt. You know what I'm saying? But every year you come back and it's the same song and dance. Well, that one's corrupt, and that one's corrupt, and that one's corrupt. Well, there's something wrong then with the party itself, if everybody's corrupt. So why don't we look towards the Republicans? Oh, they're not, but we have to vote Democrat. No, you have to vote for the individual.
Precisely. And I think the other thing that we'll see coming in the near future is where, because they're not going to be not forced but coerced to mark that box for the party, and they have to start thinking about the individuals. They're going to start, if they do any of that research, they're going to see that, this person's philosophies are more in line with mine. Because the people here in Webb County, number one, they're very conservative. Yeah. They're very faith-based, and they're very family-oriented. That's why I've stayed here for 36 years, is because of those qualities of this community, and it's beautiful qualities that they have. What you see, if you look at the two parties, I mean, it's night and day. What was that? I believe 6 years ago, or maybe it was 8 by now, but at least 6 years ago, at the National Convention, National Democratic Convention, they had a knockdown, drag-out floor debate on whether or not the 3 letters G-O-D were going to be allowed to be put in their platform. And it was obvious by the debate and the way that it was forced in there that God was not put into their platform, just the 3 letters. And yet, if you look at the Republican platform, and I realize there's a separation of church and state, but that doesn't mean that you don't leave your morals out in your car when you go vote. But if you look at our platform fits the community of Webb County much better than does the Democratic platform.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There's I believe you have democracia in Spanish. Does not mean demócrata. Totally 2 different things. Understand?
Yes.
And I think people come from Mexico, live here, and they still think that democracia, the democracy, means Democrat, and it's not.
Yeah.
No. And I think that's where you get the older generations kind of heading off in that line. Okay. What surprises me is you have the group of Vish, the Green Party. What is it?
Well, they're really more. That group is truly more an independent group.
Right.
And I've spoken with them and to them, and at some of their functions and all. They're truly independent. Vish himself aligns himself with the Green Party.
The Green Party.
But when you ask him, why, he'll give you, well, it has these qualities in it that I like more than possibly the Republican or Democrat. But they also look at it like both parties, have problems, especially at the national level. I mean, we're not getting anything done on the national level, and yet right now we have a Republican president, Republican House, Republican Senate. A lot of that has to do with the extreme polarization of our country, but whatever it has to deal with, it's the fact. The fact is things are not getting done like they should be up in Washington, and we're trying to keep that from happening in the state of Texas. I believe that when you look at that group with Vish and his people, are the ones that are in that Our Laredo. That's really, I think, one of the groups that you're looking at, because they're the extremely vocal group. I know some of them in there are Republicans. Some sometimes have aligned themselves with Democrats. Most of them try to be more of an independent, but when they get together, they're truly an independent group. They look at the policies and the people regardless of their party affiliation, and they're looking at it as this is what's better for Laredo-Webb County, not this is better for our party or your party or whatever.
Understood. And what I meant by what I brought forth was in the last couple of elections, probably from 2010 this way, you've seen that party, that Green Party, grow. You have 2-3 candidates per race, 4 or 5. Understand what I'm saying? So you have a lot more momentum. And I would always say to myself, where are the Republicans? Yeah. So I think right now we have 2. Hopefully the next time we'll have more. Yeah. And we just have to keep on pushing forward. I think we need a balance.
Yeah.
And if there's no balance.
Absolutely. And I think that one reason why the Green Party has come out with more candidates locally than the Republicans necessarily have. I know several elections ago, Vish was basically the head of it, and he started out there, and he got some others to sign up, and he was very disenchanted with some of them because they didn't run campaigns. They got their name out there, they got them on the ballot, but they didn't work for it, and therefore, of course, lost tremendously. Mm-hmm. But the Green Party is looked at more as an independent group than the Republican Party here, sure. Because if the Democratic stronghold, the Green Party's not their enemy. The Republicans are.
Right.
Because they're the opposite. Well, if you ask any Democrat here what the Green Party is about, they're going to be totally clueless.
Oh, for sure.
Personally, I had to Google it. like you do everything else that you don't know about nowadays, you Google it, and you'll find that they've got some good policies and good platform areas, but it's not. The people don't look at them as the good side and the bad side. Whether it's the Democrats and against the Republicans, they're another group over here. So that's kind of the way, why they've been able to get more people on their ballots, do more things like that than the Republican Party has. Because the other side is, personally, I've told people that have come in and wanted to be candidates on the Republican side, I vent them. I make sure that they truly can run a race, that they're prepared for it. I don't want people to just have names on the ballot just so that I can say I've got 10 people running.
Understood.
In the race. I think that's why this year, I think I've got 2 very good candidates, and I think they've got very good chances.
For sure. Have you seen the way Webb County votes with the cañoneros and with all that? Have you seen it in other parts of the state?
You see certain things that are a little bit similar. What you don't see in the other parts of the state that you see so much here is literally where off in some area they have a carne asada, and they attract people there, and a bus pulls up, loads them up, and takes them to go vote. We see a lot of that here. We see where candidates will ride on the buses. We've had problems with that at times because there is a little bit of extra influence there that's not allowed by the ethics code and the election code. So you've got, but normally there's a fine line there, and they try not to quite cross it, but it's a very fine line. If some of these practices were truly investigated by the Elections Commission, then there'd be people that would be getting into some serious troubles.
Why do you think the Ethics Commission doesn't investigate?
Very simple. If you're speaking of the Ethics Commission up in Austin, sadly, it's a fact that Laredo-Webb County has had to deal with and fight with for decades and decades, and that is, to most people in Texas, we're at the end of 35. Of course, we believe we're at the beginning of 35. We know the reality down here, but people south of the Frio River think that we're part of Mexico. Okay. And what they don't understand is all the commerce down here, all of the oil and gas production, the agricultural production is up and down the river. People, in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, they live in almost a different world at times. And if they knew what really is going on down here, I truly believe they'd have a different opinion in a lot of areas. Immigration, I think they would, border security. If you talk to a lot of people down here, they're real big on border security. Whether they look at the wall or not, that's a little specific issue. But border security, you can't tell me, can't introduce me to anybody down here that is not concerned about the bad coming from across.
You're absolutely correct. Everybody's concerned. Everybody knows the horror stories over there, and sometimes they just kind of block it out of their mind that it doesn't exist. It exists.
Absolutely.
And and I have a lot of students that are police officers, and they'll show me the pictures that come across and everything else, and you're like, wait a minute, Yeah, we have a huge problem, and the problem is but that's neither here nor there. Right when I think the wall will be built.
It will in some areas.
In some areas.
And in some areas, it's truly needed.
Yeah.
In other areas, no, we need something very different. We're blessed in Texas that, for the most part, we have a river that divides the two countries. And possibly, instead of, I would love for the government, instead of looking at a wall to build, that they would possibly look at maybe dredging it, making it deeper where it's more difficult to cross. If you look at the history of Laredo-Webb County, I believe his name was Captain Callahan, who originated the Callahan Ranch, literally used to come up from the coast in a boat all the way up to the port of Laredo. And you could navigate all the way up here. Now, no, absolutely you can't. And I realize we have a dam and all this stuff in Falcon, but beyond that, you still can't. You can't even navigate at times a simple kayak all the way, down the Rio Grande. There's places you're going to have to walk it through.
I mean, you have Amistad, you have Falcon Dam, and then Mexico has their own dam. That's so and so forth. So I think we need to alleviate that and make that, I guess, grow the river a little bit more. I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah. And by, there's a lot you can do, in flowing water. But my understanding is a lot of times the river doesn't go all the way to the coast. And so there's not water, that is wasted by going into the Gulf. So there's just a lot of things we could do.
No, you're absolutely correct. What we were talking earlier about the mistruths that some news agencies and media is covering right now. How do you think that's affecting not only the party, affecting the United States in general?
I think it's the news medias are essentially attempting to lead us into a new civil war. I really do. I think it's that serious. People can look at it and say, "Oh, that's crazy," and all this stuff. But I think it's an extremely serious situation that we're in right now. We're very, very polarized. And when you talk the polarization, the party names come out more than anything. If people, could come to the middle a little bit better, could sit down and discuss things and have respect for each other when they discuss them. But nowadays, I truly believe that more than anything, people are taught that you don't have to respect each other. Yeah. You don't have to have the courtesy. You don't have to have, things of that nature, because everything's about you. And if somebody crosses you, well, they don't have the right to, but you have the right to cross them. So there's, we've got to come back to more of a civilization here, or we will. Yeah. Wind up in a civil war. And if we thought that our civil war back in the 1800s had an incredibly high death toll, you wait until you bring it this time. Because there's a lot more, a stronger population now, a much higher population. It would be the worst thing that could ever happen in the country, but it could happen just like it did in the 1800s.
Yeah. We've seen the violence, especially in some of the left organizations, come up, and you saw that come straight from right after Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And they attacked their own party. Okay, so they attacked another Democratic candidate. They went after Hillary's group. Then all of a sudden, when Trump won, they went after Trump supporters.
Exactly.
And you see that, and nobody's doing anything about it. The police aren't stopping them. And how can I say it? When you allow that to happen, people kind of get courage or false sense of courage, that they can do whatever they want, until all of a sudden they're going to meet that wrong person, and all of a sudden it's going to ignite that gas, and all of a sudden you're going to have a big old...
Yeah. Now, when you say that nothing's being done, look also to see where a lot of these clashes are. Look at the leadership within those communities, and whether it is a liberal leadership or a conservative leadership. A lot of it's happening out in California.
Sure. Berkeley.
Yeah. A lot of it's happening around these extremely liberal universities. Some of which are even trying to remove the word man from the English language. It's these people that are just so far liberal, so far left, that they almost can't, the center is so far from where they are, they can't even see it. So you look at those communities, and even though the law enforcement, I'm sure, would prefer, being able to do their job, they're being told not to. They're being told to hold back. They're being told to restrain. Don't cross these people. If you look at the videos on TV, these are not, when you see it at a college, these are not college students. I'm sorry, I don't know what college has students that go there. Of course, I went to a different college, I'll admit. Mine was extremely conservative. But even Berkeley, I guarantee you, those students don't walk around with ski masks on. They don't, put hoods over their heads and throw, different, chairs and stuff like that through windows. That is not a Berkeley student. So, but unfortunately, you've got a community that is supporting, quote unquote, supporting the university, but they're not really. Because if they were truly supporting them, then they would have allowed their law enforcement to go in, arrest anybody with a hood on, arrest anybody, starting a fire, doing vandalism, breaking and entering. Get those people, arrest them, and start a national database on these people. Because I guarantee you're going to find that they are related to other incidences that happen up in the Northeast, that happen up in the North. You're going to find that as a common thread. And if they could ever finally do that, they would find the true source of where this trouble is coming from.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Because it's not coming necessarily from the Democratic Party, definitely not coming from the Republican Party. But what you'll find is there is some group out there, or groups, that are extreme, basically extremists, that are supporting these people, and they're paying them. How else can these people get to those locations? They're not the local people. When you had these riots after somebody was killed by a cop, that was not townspeople that were coming out and protesting. It was people being shipped in there.
Oh, for sure.
So if you can stop that, if you can find those sources and put a stop to those sources, then a lot of our division in this country, I believe, would come to an end. And you could finally get the Republicans and the Democrats to sit down at tables and talk with each other.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. When we had the problem in South Carolina in Gainesville, it was because of a statue. Same parties were there. We had the same Saturday. You had the same thing going on in San Antonio. The big difference was that the state troopers in San Antonio told those instigators to stop, or you'll be arrested.
Precisely.
See, so you have two different, like you said, leaderships that were behind it.
I think you'll see, we see it, like you said, you see it out in Georgia, you see it in the Carolinas, you see it in California, you see it up in the North. You won't see it in Texas. And it's because in Texas we believe in law and we enforce our laws. And I believe that that's where you're going to see a huge difference. When they call in the state troopers, they mean business, and they will put a stop to violence. They will not allow it to continue. They won't allow it to go out and get out so out of control it becomes a riot. Our Texas Rangers are famous for the phrase "one Ranger, one riot," because that's how they used to be sent out, and a single Ranger would stop a riot. And so, we have that strong base of the rule of law, and unfortunately, for 8 of the last 9 years, we haven't seen that on a federal level. We've seen more of where it became a situation of which laws do we enforce? Well,
pick and choose which ones benefit us.
You've got to enforce the laws that are on the books. If you look at so many of the shootings that have happened around this country, it's one of the biggest problems is they have not, and they continue not to, enforce the rule of law. I still want to know how that young man out in Georgia got a pistol. We've been told, the one that did the shooting in the church, we've been told that, it came out in the news that his father bought it for him. Wait a minute. This is a father that knew his son was undergoing psychiatric treatment and was on medications. By law, he could not have a gun. So if the father bought the gun and gave it to his son, who caused that shooting? The father.
The father.
Has a charge ever been brought against the father? No. So the laws aren't being enforced. Why do we need more? If you're looking at gun laws, okay, there's some things that I'm not real thrilled about with our gun laws, and I think we need to clean them up a little bit. But we would have a much safer society if they strictly enforce the ones that are on the books.
No, you're absolutely correct. Now, both of us are hunters. Okay, both of us respect the gun, respect the rifle, know how to use it, know the safety behind it. And many of us grew up that way, especially in Texas.
Absolutely.
I mean, now you have a percentage that's going down, but East Texas and Southern Texas, the majority of teenagers went out there and hunted with their father. And maybe some of them did not like and did not pursue it, but some of us continued with it. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, okay, my 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And in Louisville, Kentucky, you had a mandatory gun safety course that you had to take when I was in elementary.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's being done now.
Whether you hunted or not.
Whether you hunted or not. You had a gun safety. And the police officer would come into the elementary. It was you either got it in 5th, 6th, or 7th. I ended up getting it in 5th and 7th, And guess what? They taught you, they showed you some films, everything else, and everybody went through this. You knew how to respect it. Now, that's a while back. I don't think that's being done anymore. I remember going to United. We used to have a rifle shooting team. Mm-hmm. We don't have that anymore. So I guess what I'm trying to get is the lack of respect of a tool, which is a gun, is being taught to our kids now. And they don't respect it, so you have these accidents coming of age.
Absolutely.
We do need to clean up our how can I say, some of the laws that are out there. I was talking to a good friend of ours. He's a great attorney. He's up in Dallas. His name's Ken Goldberg. He's come out on the show several times, and we Skyped him in. And I said, you know what? I'm great for giving away a bump stock. I think it's worthless as can be. It's a fun thing to go plinker, but I don't think you can shoot anything with it, and we can give away some of those issues, Now he says, what do you feel about the AR-15? I don't think we should give it away. I think we should continue, but I think, and he goes, well, what do you believe on the Second Amendment? I go, we have to come back and look at a couple of things in there. It says, for a well-regulated militia. I have yet to see a militia here in Texas. Okay, but it says there, well-regulated militia. What does well-regulated militia mean to you?
Precisely. We have a well-regulated militia, and it's called the citizens. Because if you remember, when all this was written, we had just broken away from the government of England.
Exactly.
So we had just had a revolution against our government because they were going rogue. What if our government now does the same? If we can't arm ourselves, we can't defend ourselves, and we become defenseless, and then the government can definitely take over our lives.
Of course.
There's a lot of things to look at when it comes to gun control. Look at Canada. I've got a great example of Canada. Canada, if you own a gun and you go shoot it, we'll say go to target practice, you actually have to file a paper with the local government to tell them when you're leaving your home with the guns, what guns you're taking, where you're going, what route you're taking, and if you deviate from any of that and you don't get back when you're supposed to, you can get jail time. They don't have a lot of freedom when it comes to the possession and use of guns up there. So consequently, this individual that I learned this from up in Canada comes down and goes hunting in Webb County. And I was at the camp house when he came out and he was blown away. He came in and said, y'all got to go see this. Y'all got to see. It's okay. So we took all the adults back to the back and took us to this back bedroom. In this back bedroom is where all the kids were playing. And he opened the door real quietly. We looked around, and he shut the door, and he turned to us and said, can you believe that? We're like, what? They were having fun. They were just playing in there. Yeah, but did you see all the guns that were on the bed in there? And we said, yeah, but did you see where the kids were? None of them were touching them. None of them will touch them. And why? It's because they were all raised with guns from the time they were 6, 7, 8 years old. And they know that they are not to touch them unless the adult tells them to, and they take them out to go hunting or shooting. So they know how to handle them, and they know that they're not a toy. So they were perfectly safe in there. When you're raised around them properly, like you said, and properly educated, then you don't have the problem. But one of the problems that we have now with the assault weapons is, yeah, you can get one at the age of 18. But I believe that, unfortunately, it's a very sad thing that our parents, or that the parents of the society, are not raising their children to be adults at the age of 18.
You're absolutely correct.
If they were adults at the age of 18, they could consume alcohol. So we're telling our 18-year-olds that you're not adult enough to have a drink or to buy alcohol, but you can buy an assault weapon. There's something wrong with that. So we either need to do one of two things. Move the age where you can own or purchase an assault weapon up to 21, or better,
educate our kids.
Of course, it's going to take decades to do it, but we got to go back to where when our kids are 18, they're adults, and they know how to conduct themselves.
Here's one. For a long time, I was a concealed handgun instructor, okay? And I stopped for one major reason. There was no gun safety or gun usage class. You had people in there that had no conceptual clue of what was. You know, I had one lady come in there with 2 different calibers. Now, the pistol was one caliber and the bullet she brought was another caliber. I had one gentleman that said, you know, I can shoot with whatever gun I want, and he wanted to pass with a Thompson Contender. And I said, you know, many Thompson Contenders is single shot. I said, you know, I called the local DPS, and the captain at that time told me he can do the test. If he passes, it's up to him. Of course, you fail, you know, because in some of those scenarios, you have to shoot 5 or 7 times in a certain distance. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen with the Thompson Contender when you have to open it and put another one. That's just the way it is.
Precise.
So I said to myself, there is actually no gun usage or gun safety class that you should have before getting a concealed handgun. There's another thing. We have a lot of children that are hunters here. They need a special class, but the game wardens never give it.
Yeah.
So we need to enforce the regulations that we have, or make better usage of the regulations that we have.
Yeah. And a lot of that, again, goes up to the adults. The adults in our society need to spend more time with the children. They need to be the ones that do a lot of the teaching, or make sure that their kids are taught. And rather than allowing their children to get to the age of 18 and then make all the decisions of their life, you know, what faith you're going to be, whether you're going to own a gun or not, whether you're going to drink or not. No, you need to instill a lot of these rules and a lot of this information in them before they get to that age, so that they can make an informed decision. And the informed decision has to do with those first 18 years. Mm-hmm. Not once they become 18 and then they go off to college and they're taught by some professor who doesn't know anything about your society, your community, your family. You're relying on somebody from the outside teaching your own children? No, that is a responsibility of a parent.
You're absolutely correct.
And our parents aren't taking those responsibilities, and so therefore we're winding up with children at the age of 18, 19, and 20. They're not adults.
You're precisely correct. You're precisely correct. I just got go. We don't have that much time, but let's say something to the voters out there.
Voters, be just that. Don't just register. Go out and vote. Our numbers are down this year. If it's because you don't like those individuals that are on the Democratic ballot, then vote the Republican. If nothing else, just to tell the Democratic Party here in Webb County that you're not approving of what they're doing. But go out and vote. Silence is not a voice. Silence is detrimental to our society. And you've got to go out and tell everybody what you want and what you don't want, because your silence will not do that.
And for you guys in Webb County, elections end at 7 o'clock today.
7 o'clock.
So go out there and exercise the right to vote. And remember, think for yourselves and look at each candidate that's there. And
Vote for individuals.
Exactly right. Vote for the best qualified individual. Well, glad to have you.
Thank you.
And until next time, we'll see you guys.